Nintendo, a company that has delivered some of the most memorable video game franchises of all time. You probably grew up playing games like Super Mario 64, Pokemon Blue and Red, or Donkey Kong, and you know how much of an influence these games have had in the video game medium. But if there is one game that goes above and beyond in being praised as one of the most important and influential games of all time, is by far Ocarina of Time. After beating Ocarina of Time for the first time 26 years after its release, does it still hold up for new players? That's exactly what I'm going to try to answer in this video. Has Ocarina of Time aged well like fine wine or spoiled milk? 1997. 2D is the old dog, 3D is the new kid on the block, and all your favorite franchises want to be him. Final Fantasy, Metal Gear, and so many other games try to pursue this transition to 3D with great success, some more than others. Nintendo also heavily pursued this with a little underground video game that nobody really knows called Super Mario 64. Developers from this team and Star Fox 64 ended up being also part of the development of their next new attempt to transition a famous franchise from 2D to 3D, The Legend of Zelda. If Super Mario 64 was the first game to effectively create a 3D explorable world with platforming, Ocarina of Time was the first game to combine in an effective way three major things: 3D exploration, lock-on targeting combat, and a context-sensitive action system, which is a fancy way to say that the same button can basically do multiple actions, depending on where you are in the world. With the A button, you can roll, grab, dive, open a chest, talk to an NPC, or climb. And when you play this game, you can absolutely tell that this served as a blueprint for many games that came after it. From Software games are probably the closest you can get. Dark Souls, Sekiro, Elden Ring. I swear Miyazaki was like, you know what? These kids that grew up with Ocarina of Time, let's make a game for them now that they've become filthy adults. And Ocarina Demon Souls of Time was born. This was my second Zelda game that I've ever played, the first one being the original Zelda game. This means that I have zero nostalgia or attachment to this game, or really this franchise. Let's start with some of the things that I liked about this game. Character design is still absolutely charming and memorable. A lot of 3D games from the 90s are infamous exactly for this: aging character designs. I don't believe this is the case with Ocarina of Time. Being a stylized game does help quite a lot for these characters to age a lot better. All of them have a very distinctive visual style that makes them very easily recognizable. The Kokiri are all small children that live literally in fairyland, and they seem to be a parallel with Peter Pan. The Zora are aquatic elegant creatures that feel royal and noble. The Gerudo are tall and fierce warriors with Ganondorf, the main villain, at the forefront. And all of these races and features give you a clear picture of what these groups are all about without really even needing to say a word. The soundtrack also plays a massive role on this. And on that note, the soundtrack is probably one of the best things about this game. It still works incredibly well, it thrives in simplicity, and manages to be both appealing to a young and adult audience. It's super easy to understand the emotion that is being associated with when it kicks in. The water temple theme feels mysterious and deep, and it does so by using instruments like the piccolo, the quartz, and the chimes. The Goron theme has a very tribal yet upbeating nature with deep roots in instruments like the cuica from Brazil that was brought by African slaves. The Kokiri village theme is very sweet and caring and gives you almost this feeling of hope and safety. In this song specifically, they even use the oboe and the bells. Or should I say the Glockenspiel? All that I'm trying to say here is that they clearly used a plethora of instruments for the soundtrack with the objective to achieve an emotion in a very effective way. But I think the biggest thing about this game, and honestly it's one of the things that Nintendo just thrives at even today with games like Donkey Kong Bonanza, is this philosophy of environmental interactivity. This is to me the main reason why everyone should at least try out Ocarina of Time. The amount of input that is put from the player via its actions and item usage is remarkable. You can do so much stuff like blowing up doors, defrost objects, rock smash your way through using a hammer, get past strong currents using iron boots, hover the air for a brief moment using the hover boots. Even the ocarina is a great mechanic because if you play the correct song, it allows you to fast travel, it allows you to change water levels or even the weather, it opens passages, it even interacts with NPCs and so much more. It's actually kind of surprising to me that not many games, at least that I can remember, have tried to recreate or improve on this idea of using a musical instrument to interact with environments or NPCs. This interactivity alone is something that absolutely defines Nintendo and the way that they do their video games. It is part of their core philosophy when making them. The combat was fine, and to be honest, I would have liked to see a little bit more from it. Puzzles feel like they are the bread and butter of this game, and combat just feels a little bit more to the sideline. It is a pretty straightforward combat, and there's nothing wrong with it. You can use your shield to block incoming attacks, or even dodge. Heck, you can even do a backflip. And you have a couple of ways to actually interact and defeat your enemies, by either using just your simple sword attacks or all your items that you have been collecting. A lot of these fights actually end up being small puzzles, where you need to use specific items in order to find a way to beat the enemy more efficiently. The lock-on targeting, or Z-targeting as it was known, was one of the most important additions of this game that influenced the entire industry. The overworld for today's standards, it is pretty bland, but honestly, I think it still has a charm to it. It definitely seems like the main intention was to give you this sense of awness once you leave the Kokiri Forest for the first time into the massive field of Hyrule. And for that, I can appreciate it. Does it get a bit annoying sometimes to walk around? Sure, but hey, at least we got a pretty cool day and night system. What? Whoa, bro, that is actually insane. I'm not even joking. Like, I had no idea about this. I find this very surprising for a, 1997, whatever game? That is really cool. The story is not exactly the main reason why we play these games in the first place. It is a pretty simple story meant to be understood by a younger audience, and for that audience, it works perfectly well. Okay, now for the stuff that I personally didn't like. Camera controls are pretty bad for today's standards. Obviously, we're talking about the 90s, and when it comes to camera controls, I do forgive this game quite a lot. We're talking about an era of gaming where nobody really knew like what they were doing when it comes to 3D. But yeah, I have to be honest here and say that yeah, camera controls are a problem in this game. It's hard at times to lock on the camera to enemies because they're either too far away, there is no way for you to rotate the camera, which made me use like the R2 control to lock on to where I wanted to go. But there are 2 points that together made my enjoyment of this game break a lot of the times. Dungeon level designs. I personally find that a lot of these dungeon designs were just completely convoluted. Thinking especially about the water, shadow, and fire temple that are just tedious to navigate through. There is this constant need of backtracking. The amount of memorizing that you just need to do to move forward is honestly baffling, given that this is supposed to be a kid's game. Even some of its simple puzzles, if you can even call them that, can become tedious to figure out. Sometimes very simple things that just weren't clear to you in the first place, you get severely punished for not realizing it. And on top of that, navigating throughout some of these dungeons is really not easy. It's very easy to get lost. A lot of the times you even need to pay attention to the lines of dialogue that some NPC gives you in order for you to understand where you need to go, and if you didn't pay attention, well, good fucking luck. Navi's addition actually kind of confuses me a bit here, because Navi's purpose is exactly this: navigation. It's in the goddamn name. But more often than not, you end up realizing that she is just useless. A lot of the information she gives you, either you already know or she's constantly repeating the same shenanigans. And sometimes she just gives you away pretty obvious stuff. I always felt like at the time where I needed Navi the most to let me know what I needed to do, she didn't really fulfill that role. Look, I understand that if you are a puzzle enthusiast, this game might just be right up your alley. It is a challenging game, and it's one of those games that really rewards exploration and trying out everything in your pocket. Pacing is probably the biggest problem with this game in my view. Both the odd navigation and the convoluted puzzles from the dungeon level design only amplify this problem even further. On top of that, you have minor things like the constant need to switch between the Kokiri and the Iron Boots in the Water Temple. The chat box conversations are a drag that you simply cannot skip, and even the fact that traveling through different places is so goddamn slow. And let's not forget about the tragedy of auto jumping. No! Why do you auto jump? I swear to God! Why auto jump, bro? Who thought that was a good idea in Nintendo? Who? Why? Why auto jumping? Why is this a thing? I understand that this game is from the 90s. It comes from a very early age of 3D where people did not know what they were exactly doing. But I can't simply lie to myself and to you guys about how I felt playing this game after all these years. And the reality is, this game does have a couple of issues that I simply cannot ignore. Before I give you my final score, I just want to make this clear. Ocarina of Time is undeniably one of the most important video games made not only in the 90s, but of all time. It served as a blueprint for a lot of modern video games with great character design, awesome soundtrack, and an incredible variety in terms of environments and item interactivity. It has a straightforward and simple combat that works very well, a simple but charming overworld and story, but its convoluted dungeons, level design, constant backtracking, and very poor navigation throughout these maps just breaks the flow of the story and the gameplay constantly, leading to heavy moments of frustration and tilting. And it also made clear that this game has a serious pacing issue, at least for today's standards. For this reason, my final score for this game is a yes. It definitely tastes like old milk. I understand that if you're a fan of Ocarina of Time, my opinion is definitely on the minority. I think this game is definitely a product of its time, and that's okay, folks. It does not take away the fact of how important this game was at its time. But yeah, make sure to join the Discord, leave a like, leave a sub, and I'll see you guys next time. Over and out.